Terry has been with the Internal Revenue Service for 35 years and works with the tax professionals to identify ways that the agency can be more responsive to customers' needs. She also coordinates IRS outreach and education for the tax practitioner community and small business owner, while also overseeing the stakeholder liaison virtual outreach team. So before we get started, to optimize the quality of this presentation for everybody, I ask that you direct all questions that you may have to the chat box, which would probably be down below. And Terry will address these questions throughout the presentation. So with that, let's jump in. Terry?
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all this evening and apologize up front that I am not on camera. I was shared with Ronti that I have been suffering from an awful sinus infection for the last few days and just a little bit under the weather, but nonetheless, absolutely privileged to be here with you all this evening. So before I jump into the business, if you will, I would like to start by saying that I hope you all are well and not personally, at least from a health perspective, affected by this pandemic that we're dealing with. We are absolutely in some unique times and facing some unprecedented challenges. And, from a personal standpoint, as Ronti introduced me, and I thank you for that, I have been with the Internal Revenue Service for over 30 years, and I absolutely cannot recall that there's ever been a situation such as this that has affected the Internal Revenue Service in this way. I've obviously been through a number of shutdowns and tax reforms and, various administrations, but this is absolutely unprecedented. And the entire agency, quite honestly, is completely focused on implementing important relief legislation, on providing as much help as we can, and quite honestly, as soon as we can for the taxpayers. And having said that, I absolutely acknowledge that there have been some blips in the road, and I'll kind of talk about that as we go along. But for those of you who are just familiar with IRS, even in a general sense, you have to kind of think about the timing of this pandemic. And while there is absolutely no time for something like this to happen, when it did happen, we were in, quite honestly, the middle of our filing season, where tax returns would normally be due to be filed. And so for us, January through April is typically just kind of all hands on deck as it relates to just a normal filing season. So just imagine, if you will, this happening in the middle of that. And so we have to kind of put the pause on the filing season, try to interpret this legislation that was passed, figure out a way to get people paid, figure out a way to really kind of put the pause on enforcement activities, which I'll also talk about. In addition to that, try to figure out a way to create some portals that would hopefully be of some use to the taxpayers in trying to figure out, where is my money and when am I going to get it, quite honestly. And so it just was a perfect storm, if you will, for this type of thing to happen. And again, having said that, absolutely no time for something like this to happen to any of us. So again, I hope you're all well, continuing to stay safe, and really just trying to manage this this situation as best as you can. So I'm going to jump right into this. There are a couple of provisions that I'm going to cover, and all of these are related to the CARES Act. The CARES Act was passed March 27th in direct relationship to the COVID-19 pandemic. And when this was passed, there were several relief provisions that were enacted that affect all taxpayers and some taxpayers. So I'll talk about those in the order that is shown on this screen. So we'll kind of stay on this screen for a second. I will say up front that, excuse me, I did not have an opportunity to really give a comprehensive PowerPoint because the Treasury Department has still not approved some of the language, if you will, that that we are allowed to give. But I'm going to tell you what's going on, and absolutely appreciate having the opportunity to do that. So let's start with the filing and payment extension. One of the very first things that we did was, again, because this is in the middle of the filing season, and we knew that filing a tax return would be the last thing on people's minds because of the economic impact that this pandemic had. You know, I'm working at home, which I assume most of you probably are as well. And in that, you know, that means that a lot of the employers are not open for business. Clearly, the face-to-face interaction that we normally would be involved in is kind of suspended, if you will. And so we first made the decision to extend the filing and paying, or payment rather, deadline for individual income tax returns initially. Okay, and so as you all realize that the individual income tax returns would have normally been due by April 15th, and any payment that would have been due would have been expected to be paid by April 15th. And so what we initially did was extend that filing and payment extension to July 15th for all individual filed tax returns, all 1040s. We have since, though, expanded that to include any tax return, regardless of whether it's a partnership return, a corporate return, an estate return, any tax return that would have normally been due prior to July 15th now has an extension to file and pay until July 15th. However, if you find that you need some additional time to file that tax return, whether it is an individual return or a business return, you can still file for an automatic extension. So for an individual return, you could still file an IRS Form 4868 that would grant you an additional 3 months or until October 15th to file, but it would not grant you an additional time to pay. The extension is always ever been to file, not to pay. So again, if any of you find that you do need some additional time to get that tax return filed, you can complete that 4868 for an individual return or Form 7004 for any other type of return. But please keep in mind that that is only an extension to file and not to pay. So any income tax that you anticipate that you would owe, you need to pay it by July 15th in order to avoid any additional penalties or interest. So I'm sorry, excuse me. So before I get into the next one, which is the economic impact payments, which quite a few of us are certainly interested in hearing about, are there any questions in reference to the filing and paying extension? Okay, I don't see any nods, so I will move right into the economic impact payment. So one of the other things that was enacted in this CARES Act is that we decided, or the Congress decided rather, that there needed to be some way to compensate taxpayers and non-taxpayers. And I'll talk about that in a sec as well. But certainly there needed to be some way in which we could ensure that citizens, I'll put it like that, the citizens had some form of payment that would assist them in really just kind of getting through this pandemic. And so the economic impact payments in general are allowed for all taxpayers. Okay, so anybody who would file a tax return who would meet certain income eligibility requirements, pardon me. And so for a single taxpayer who has an adjusted gross income of $75,000, or married filing separate, so single or married filing separate, adjusted gross income of $75,000 or less would automatically qualify for a $1,200 economic impact payment. For head of household filers, that adjusted gross income would be $112,500 or less, and for married filing joint taxpayers, the adjusted gross income would be $150,000 or less. So in addition to that, if any of these filers had eligible children that they could claim as dependents that were under the age of 17, they would, in addition to those base amounts for $1,200 or $2,400, would also qualify for additional payments of $500 per child under the age of 17. Okay, and so again, there are some base amounts that are associated with the respective filing, respected filing statuses that I've listed. In addition to that, if the incomes were greater than these base amounts, then it doesn't mean that you would be ineligible for a payment. It just means that the payment would be prorated up to max amount. So for a single taxpayer, single or married filing separate taxpayer, you could actually receive this payment if your adjusted gross income was up to $99,000. It would just be prorated between the 75,000 and 99. The same would be true for head of household. Again, 112.5 being the amount that would qualify you for the maximum amount of economic impact payment, and 136.5 being the max. And for married filing jointly, 150,000 or less AGI, you'd receive the maximum or the minimum rather of 2,400, and then you would max out at 198,000. And so let me just say something about the eligible dependents, because we've got our eligible children rather. We've gotten quite a few questions about that. And so for purposes of this credit, the eligible children are children that are under the age of 17, and that ties directly into the eligibility for a child tax credit. So when you file your normal 1040, you have children that are under the age of 17, you are allowed to take a $2,000 child tax credit, which is a dollar for dollar reduction in tax. And so we use the same set of standards to determine who would be eligible to receive this additional $500 in economic impact payment. So for most taxpayers, you don't need to do anything. What we're doing is we're taking a look at the most recently filed tax return to determine eligibility for this payment. So keep in mind that the 2019 return is not even due to be filed yet. Because of the COVID-19 and this CARES Act, that's been extended until July 15th of 2020. So if you've not yet filed your tax return, you need to kind of do a little bit of tax planning and determine whether or not it's smart to do that. Okay, if your income was less than 18 and you would qualify for this payment based on these amounts that I've given you, you might want to wait a little bit to file that 19, because if you've earned more income in 19 and that makes you ineligible, you don't want to do that. This is unprecedented where, virtually most people are going to get this payment. So do a little bit of tax planning and make sure that, you're not harming yourself by filing that 19 if it's going to make you ineligible to receive those payments. And so again, for most taxpayers, you don't need to do anything. We're going to take a look back at the most recently filed tax return, either 18 or 19, and we're going to issue the payments based on those tax returns. Most people, well, not most, but 88 million people have already gotten paid. And those are going to be the people who have already filed a tax return, who either 18 or 19, and who have gotten a refund and have elected to receive that refund through direct deposit. Clearly, those are much easier payments for us to process. It does not require, much in terms of personnel to do that. We push a button, we send the payment. So hopefully, those of you on the call who qualified have already received your payments. There are going to be those who perhaps received a refund and elected to receive a paper check. Those are still being processed. Paper checks, we are not able to process as quickly for a number of reasons. Even under the best of circumstances, we wouldn't be able to process paper checks as quickly. But right now, we're on a very, very skeletal crew, and so they are only able to issue 5 to 7 million paper checks per week versus 88 million, over a 2-week period. And so again, most people need to do nothing. And then we talk about a separate subset of taxpayers who are not required to file for a couple of different reasons. The first subset would be taxpayers or citizens rather, who would receive Social Security benefits, which under normal circumstances would never be taxable. So a person whose only income is Social Security would never be required to file a tax return. The same would be true for recipients of SSI, so the disability, SSI, SSDI. The same would be true for Veterans Administration, and the same would be true for railroad benefit recipients. So those folks would never be required to file a tax return if that were the only income that they received. And so we have an agreement with not only the Social Security Administration, but also the Veterans Affairs Administration, that the people whose income only encompasses, what I've just said, they don't need to do anything either. They will automatically get the payments in the method in which they receive those monthly benefits. So if they get it on, it directly deposited into their bank account or directly deposited onto a debit card, that's how they're automatically going to get those payments. Those payments are scheduled to go out starting, as a matter of fact, next week, over the next couple of weeks, within the first 2 weeks of May. Social Security recipients, SSI recipients, VA recipients, and railroad retirement beneficiaries will start getting those payments automatically. So they don't need to do anything either. What's extremely unprecedented about these payments, though, is that those who would not have a filing requirement just based on their source of income are also eligible. So that includes welfare recipients, that includes homeless, that includes people who just have no source of income. Okay, and so I am asking you all to please get the word out, because I promise you, I cannot even imagine another time that something like this will happen, that we truly are reaching these underserved communities. And it is truly just my personal mission, forget that I work for IRS. It's just my personal mission to make sure that people who are entitled to this income get it. Okay. As a side note, I have, and Shani and Ranti certainly know this, I have a VITA site, which is a volunteer income tax assistance site, where I, along with a group of other IRS employees, volunteer our time January through April to prepare free tax returns for people in our communities. And so my particular site is at Acts Full Gospel, in a church in East Oakland. We probably prepare 400 to 500 returns a year, free of charge, on the weekends for people in our community. So I'm very passionate about serving us, if you will, and certainly want to make sure that we have the opportunity to get the information that we would not otherwise get from the IRS. Look, I'm gonna keep it real. Nobody likes us, and I understand that, but it's important for me, to kind of show a different face of the IRS, and to make sure that we know that we are represented, especially in the arenas that we should be. And so in general, there are very few instances where people will not qualify for these payments. And I'll tell you what a couple of those are. And then I see that there are a few questions in the chat box, and I'm assuming that's probably related to what I'm talking about. So what would make a person ineligible, of course, would be if their income was greater than the amounts that I've shared. Okay. If they did not have a valid Social Security number. And so there are folks that are here that are not here legally, that have what is called an I-10, which is an individual taxpayer identification number, that does not allow them to work, of course, but it allows them to file a tax return if they're here working. So again, you have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to have a valid Social Security number. And the third thing is you cannot have been claimed as a dependent on someone else's return. So that ticks off a lot of folks who have college age kids that they're still claiming as dependent. So if the college age young person, is a dependent on their parents' tax return, that's going to prevent that college age person, whether they filed a tax return or not, from being eligible for this economic impact payment. So let me pause for a second, because I do see there are 14 questions or something in the chat box. So is now a good time to pause and take a couple of these questions?
Yes, Terry, now's a great time.
Okay, so let me go back and see what I can find here. Okay. I see something about a grant that I'm not going to answer right now. I'm not sure if that's intended for me, but Let me go back. Okay. If you don't meet the $75,000 for single and there were dependent children, would a person get the money for them? Okay, so the $75,000 is the amount of adjusted gross income that would make a person eligible for the max of $1,200. Okay. However, remember that it will go up to 99,000. And so come back to me, because if the adjusted gross income is less than 99,000, you would still be eligible for the payment. It would just be prorated. And I believe that what it is, and I'll see if I can find that before we end this evening. I believe they reduce it by, and it's not much, $5 for each $100 that's over that minimum amount. And so that's going to depend. It doesn't mean you won't get anything. It depends on whether or not your adjusted gross income is $99,000 or less. The second part of this is if there were dependent children, would a person get money for them? I'm not sure what that means, but I will say this, that the person who is entitled to the additional $500 for the eligible child is the person that claimed that eligible child on their 1040, on the 1040 that we base the eligibility of the payment of. So again, if you were the one who claimed these eligible children, they're under 17, you meet the income requirement, whether it's, even though it's over 75, but if it's less than 99, you would still receive an economic impact payment. It may be prorated based on your income, but that additional $500 per child is not prorated. That's a set amount per child under the age of 17. So I hope that, excuse me, I hope that answers it. If not, just, come back to me, and I'm certainly going to provide my contact information, and you can feel free to contact me directly if that did not totally address that. So let me go down, and I'm losing my voice already. Okay. Client tried to use the IRS app. Message kept coming up that their 2018 income and tax owed on the return doesn't match the records, even though the amounts entered match their tax return transcript obtained from the IRS. Do they have to wait for a paper check to come in the mail? So that's interesting, especially given the fact that they were able, I'm assuming, to obtain a transcript from the Get My Transcript app on IRS. And so that's interesting that it's still showing that it did not match. And so if that is the case, then yes, they would have to wait for a paper check, because if the information doesn't match, it would not allow them to go in and validate anything. Again, you feel free to reach out to me directly as well, and let me see what's going on with that. Now, before I say that, I want you all to understand I don't have access to any systems where I can go in and pull up anybody's particular social security number, but I would absolutely, I absolutely don't mind talking to you one-on-one to, to make sure I'm understanding what it is you're saying. But the system that this portal should absolutely correspond to the transcript that you would have got, especially if it's something that you got from irs.gov. So definitely reach out to me so I can see what it is, you're exactly experiencing, and see if I can do something to help you with that. Okay, let's see. Client tried to, I'm sorry, if you don't meet the 75, okay, I think I answered that. Client tried to use, I think I saw that, E2. Trying to scroll through this screen, I apologize. Let's see. All right, 2018, oh no, I'm skipped one, I'm sorry. Let me go up right quick. The amounts entered. If you made a payment for 2019 from your checking, will the IRS use that account to deposit? No. So let me make sure I'm understanding. If you owed taxes as a result of filing your 2019, you did a direct debit to pay that tax. No, we are not going to use that account information for a direct deposit. We are only going to use the account information on a return that showed a refund in which you indicated, that you wanted that to go into a specific checking or a specific bank account. So no, we're not going to use account information that you would have instructed us to take a payment from. So no. In that case, if you wanted to go into the portal to update your bank account information, you could do that. However, if you get on the Get My Payment app to check the status of your payment, if it shows that the payment is pending, right? So you can get on the app, it'll show your check is scheduled to be mailed May 4th. And that is, I will say to you, that is the next wave of paper checks that are going out. They're going to go out on Monday. So if you get on that Get My Payment app and it shows that the payment is already scheduled, then you cannot go in and update any bank account information. However, if it shows that it's still pending or it doesn't show anything, we don't have any information, then you absolutely can go in there and update bank account information so that you get the payment through direct deposit. Okay. All right. 2018 filed over the limit, 2019 filed over the limit, 2020 well below the limit, any payment or relief available. Not as of now. We have not heard anything about any additional relief beyond this particular filing year. The media reports things that IRS certainly does not know, or we have not heard. I'll say that we have not heard. I've received several questions as to whether or not the rumors are true that there's going to be a second wave of payments, sometime during the summer, and I've not heard that. I've heard it on the news just like everybody else, but I've certainly not heard that in-house. So for now, I would say no, because I don't know that to be any different. Okay, so I'm going to take a couple more of these, and then I will go into the People First Act, and then I'll come back to make sure that I have an opportunity to get through the material, and then I'll come back and respond to the rest if that's okay. All right, so let's see. Try to use the app. Okay, so from Dennis. Oh, hi, Dennis. I think I met Dennis. All right. Client tried to use the IRS app for entering the bank account information, but an error message kept coming up saying that their 2018 income. Oh, I think I already saw that. Okay, I saw that. So maybe I'm just seeing. I think I'm just seeing the same question. So, all right, if not, then I will, I'll come back to those in a sec. Okay, so let me go into the People First initiative. So in addition to the extension of filing pay and the eligibility for these economic impact payments, IRS had to make some serious decisions in terms of what it is we would do to offer some administrative relief to taxpayers. And so, in addition to being in the middle of filing season, audits and collection activity goes on 7, but 12 months a year. There really is no break in the examinations that we do, in the collection activity that we do. And so, again, because of this pandemic, we had to kind of step back and say, wait a minute, is it really fair to continue to audit somebody? Is it really fair to continue to do these collection enforcements that we have in place? And so as part of this CARES Act, one of the legislative reliefs have to do with what is referred to as a People First initiative. And so again, under this initiative, the IRS has temporarily adjusted the processes to help the individual taxpayers and businesses during these just crazy times. So some of the changes include postponing certain payments related to installment agreements and offers in compromise. So let me kind of pause and explain what that means. So if a taxpayer had some outstanding deficiency, from some prior years, and they entered into an installment agreement, which means you've agreed to pay a certain amount per month, over a maximum of 72 months until this deficiency is paid, then those installment agreements are suspended until July 15th, except for those that were set up using a direct debit. So if you set up your installment agreement and you said, hey, IRS, I want you to go into my bank account and take out whatever the agreed upon amount was per month on this particular day, those direct debit installment agreement payments are going to continue unless you contact your financial institution and stop them. Okay, so any paper, any manual installment agreement payments would automatically cease. There would be no expectation that those be paid, but any direct debit installment agreements would not cease unless the taxpayer again contacted their financial institution to stop that. The same would be true for any offers in compromise. So if you had submitted an offer in compromise, and just, for those who may not know, and this is a very, very simplistic explanation, so please don't say, well, Terry said this is how this works, but I'll give a very general explanation of how an offer in compromise works. You owe $100,000 to IRS. There's no way, and you know what, they're ever going to get it, right? Because you either don't have the economic means to pay it, you don't have assets that you could liquidate to pay it, and a number of other factors, right? And so you offer IRS a fraction of whatever it is you owe, and there are a number of facts and circumstances that would determine whether or not you'd be eligible for that, but let's assume you were. Okay, so IRS accepts a lesser amount than what you owe, and in that instance, you'd also be set up on a payment plan. So if any of you are in that posture where you do have an offer in compromise, you are expected to make certain types of payments. Those payments are suspended as well until July 15th. Continuing with some of the collection suspensions, anybody who has an active lien or levy, those collection activities are also suspended. So a lien is something that is placed against some property. If you owe IRS, you have not paid, you have ignored notices, IRS will place a lien against property. Levies are demands for income from income sources. So it could be a levy against wages. It's typically going to be a levy against wages or a levy against a bank account. So anything of that nature is also suspended until July 15th. Now, there are certain collection activities that are still active, okay? And so I don't want to give the impression that they've suspended everything. Certain things are still going to be enforced, and those are typically going to be for what we consider high-income non-filers. A high-income non-filer is somebody who's made $100,000 or more and has a history of not filing a tax return. Clearly, they would have a requirement to do so, but for whatever reason, they have not done so, and perhaps we've levied their bank account or levied some wages or something like that. And so those types of activities are going to continue throughout. So those are not suspended. Again, each of these collection activities that I've talked about being suspended are suspended through July 15th at the minimum, unless we hear otherwise. So for now, people who are under those situations certainly have a reprieve. And also during this period, to the extent possible, there will be virtually no in-person contact, none. So we will limit or eliminate in total, quite honestly, any face-to-face contact. So that would include any audits that are going on that would have normally required any face-to-face, any interaction. Again, repeating, but any collection activity that is going on that would require any face-to-face interaction will be suspended. Most IRS offices, especially the federal buildings, have what are called taxpayer assistance centers, or the walk-in offices where you would typically be able to go in and get forms, make payments, things like that. All of those offices are closed as well. The only thing that is absolutely still going on, which I certainly hope none of you are are necessarily involved in, is our criminal investigation division. So if the IRS POPO is out there, they're still going to be out there. They have not ceased any operation. They're going to continue to investigate any criminal tax cases, and that is in no way affected or impacted by the shelter in place. any questions on that? Okay, so let me ask this before because it's difficult for me to kind of scroll through the actual chat. So Ronti, are these in that link that you sent me? Are the questions?
Yes, Terry.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
So actually, if you look in the chat box, you'll still see the most recent questions, but they're also in the link.
okay,
So I'll let you know which questions have not been answered at this point.
okay. Let's see. So let me go back. Um,
So yeah, if you scroll to the very bottom of your chat box, you'll see the questions that haven't been answered.
okay. All right. If someone just recently filed their 2018 tax return, will they get a direct deposit stimulus payment? Okay. So that that depends on if the return has been accepted. So if the return has been accepted by IRS, okay, so you need to get on, where's my refund? Or obviously, if you electronically filed it, then you would know whether or not the return has been accepted. So if the return has been accepted by IRS, they got a refund, they requested a direct deposit of that refund from the 2018 tax return, then yes, they would get a direct deposit stimulus payment. They can check the status of that again on the Get My Payment portal on irs.gov. Okay, for prior year late tax payments, are penalties suspended from April 15th to July 15th for prior year tax payments? So Dennis, you're gonna have to contact me about that one. I'm not sure I understand what it is you're asking. Are they going to suspend penalties and interest from a prior year deficiency? No, I don't think that they will. Are they going to pursue any collection activity from that? No, not until July 16th. So make sure I understand what it is you're asking. Excuse me, some water. Okay, so call me Dennis, or send me an email. Let me make sure I understand what it is you're asking. Okay, thank you, Chica. So what Chica posted is, here's a quick link to the IRS Where's My Refund. Now that's very different than Where's My Economic Impact Payment. Okay, Where's My Refund is the portal that you check for the status of the refund of your regularly filed income tax return. That's only going to show refund status for a 2019 return. That's not going to show refund status from anything prior to the current year. Okay, so the Where's My Refund, again, will allow you to check the status of the current year tax return, the refund status from the current year only. Again, that's very different from the Where's My Payment. The Where's My Payment, which is also on the homepage of irs.gov, is a portal that you would use to check the status of your economic income payment. Okay, that's what that one is for. So the economic impact payment portal will ask for your social security number. It's going to ask for the adjusted gross income from the most recently filed tax return. It's going to ask for the amount of the refund or the amount that you owed. And so it's very similar with the Where's My Refund portal, in that it will tell you each step of the processing. So we've received it, we're determining what you get, the next phase will show what your expected deposit or mail date is, and then the last status will show that the actual deposit date or the actual mail date. So two different portals. Where's My Refund is to check the status of a current filed tax return. Where's My Payment, or Get My Payment rather, is to check the status of the economic impact payment. Okay. Single mother, my son's father owes back child support do we get those payments and when do we get them? Absolutely. So I'm glad that that was raised. That is one of the only other exceptions of a person who would not get a payment. So if they otherwise would qualify based on, citizenship, valid social security number, income, not being claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return, the one thing that will prevent them from getting it is back child support. So you will absolutely automatically get that. Now, what I'm not sure about is, well, let me say this. So the state of California will notify us that, John Doe owes back child support. And so that would be in any case, right? So regularly filed tax return. John owes back child support, and the state has notified us that he has some child support arrearages, or she has child support arrearages, whatever the case is. We automatically take the money and send it to the state. Now, how that gets to the person that is owed the money, I'm not quite sure, but I can absolutely look into that for you. I know for a fact, though, he or she will not get that economic impact payment, but it will come directly to the person who is due that payment or is due that back child support. So that I absolutely know to be true. Okay. If you exceed 99,000, would you get the children allowance? No, you either are going to get the economic impact payment with the additional 500 for the eligible child or not. It's not either or. You have to first qualify for the economic impact payment in order to qualify for the additional allowance for the child. Okay. What mechanism exists for extending the payment date beyond July 15th? None. There's never an extension to pay. There's only ever an extension to file. And so that doesn't have anything to do with this pandemic. That would be under a normal circumstance. Again, a normal individual tax return would due to be filed by April 15th of the following year. You have always been entitled to do an automatic 6-month extension. Okay, and so under normal circumstances, you would file a 4868, which is an additional extension to file the tax return. It would have given you until October 15th to file, but an extension is never an extension to pay. And so even for people who would need some additional time to file their tax return, perhaps they've not gotten everything they need to get together, to really pull that tax return together appropriately, you would still need to kind of guesstimate, if you will, what it is you would owe, and you would need to pay that by the official due date of the return. So normally April 15th for 2019, July 15th. Okay, so you have until July 15th to estimate what it is you think you would owe and pay that, even if you needed an additional extension to file till October 15th. So never an extension to pay, but definitely an extension to file. Okay, so I think I need to go back up because I don't know, Ronti, unless you can read some to me that I may not have gotten to. Ronti, can you hear me? Oh, okay, let me see. Okay, so this is a SBA question. I'm not even going to touch that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I can even answer that. It's asking about this SBA loan. Okay. I think she answered all the questions. Have we covered all your slides? Yes, there were only, I stayed on that main slide. The only other slide really just shows the irs.gov COVID page, which I certainly hope that if you are not familiar with it, please bookmark that. We update that page literally every day with some updated frequently asked questions. some of the questions are pretty interesting, and I do see a couple more a couple more questions coming in. But we update that page literally every day, specifically as it relates to the frequently asked questions that are coming in. And there are some interesting questions. You know, some of them that have come in. I got a call yesterday from the County of Alameda Parole Department, and they were asking if recently released prisoners would be eligible for these payments. I've gotten calls from people asking what to do with checks that we've issued to deceased people. And so this is a tremendous undertaking. So again, your best course of information is absolutely this page and not our toll-free number, because there's no one there to answer it. And I'm being totally honest with you. You know, the call sites are, for the most part, shut down. We recently got some information that IRS is calling back, or attempting to call back, 10,000 employees. And these employees, though, are primarily the folks that work in our campuses. And the campuses are where tax returns are processed, paper returns are processed, where, you know, the mail is received, where payments are sent, things like that. And so, you know, any of you who have not electronically filed your tax return, and for whatever reason have sent in a paper return, it's not going to be processed anytime soon, because paper returns are not being processed. There's no one there to process them. Okay, and so that kind of goes to one of these questions from Dennis: when will IRS start processing paper tax returns again? That's a good question. Again, like I just said, we have not IRS, or has asked for 10,000 volunteers to come back and start doing some of these essential services, again, like processing paper returns, answering some of the calls on these toll-free numbers. Not sure, though, Dennis, when that is going to happen. And even when it starts, I would imagine that it still is going to be quite an arduous process to, you know, to get all of that stuff done. So at this point, I do not know when it will start, nor how long it will take them, you know, to get through the number of returns that have come in. Okay, are you able to provide insight about how COVID-19 impacts leave from work? I understand you can take 12 weeks impacted, like if your child's school closed. And that's absolutely true. And I know that, I think Ronti told me that you guys are going to talk on another session about some of the business credits that are available, but that certainly is one, is the family and leave credit provision. And so the 12 weeks that you're talking about is one of the provisions of that Family and Care Act leave. One is for employees who are personally affected, by coronavirus, either because they are sick, they are sheltered in place, either because of the work, either because, you know, the work, their particular job is shut down, or they've self-quarantined themselves. Then that's one of the credits. That one is, I believe, only for 2 weeks. There's another for a person who is the primary caregiver for someone who was affected by coronavirus. That one is also for 2 weeks. And then there's the one that is definitely for the issue that you raised that has to do with childcare. So if your child is unable to go to school because schools are closed, which we of course know that's the case, or if the child care is closed, then yes, a person could be eligible for up to 12 weeks of paid sick leave. Limited to, I think it's $200 a day, maximum wage reimbursement of $200 a day for 12 weeks. So that is definitely something, and feel free to reach out to me directly if you want a little more information on that. But I know that's something you guys are going to cover on another session. Okay, I think that's it, unless my contact information. So that's on the that's on the last slide. But it is Terri, Terri Malone, M-A-L-O-N-E, at irs.gov. So absolutely feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions that I've either not gotten to this evening or that may come up after we disconnect. So any other questions? Have I covered them all, Ronti? Yep. Okay. All right. So if no other questions, I think that's going to be a wrap for me.
Thank you, Terry. We appreciate you so much for taking the time to address these questions and just sharing your insight and knowledge with everyone.
Yes,
Absolutely. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you all. I really do appreciate it. And, you know, and if there's an opportunity where some additional information comes up, which I'm sure there will be, I will certainly reach out to you to see if it makes sense for us to do a part 2.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay, great.
So before we close, we would like to share, as Ronti mentioned, we do represent NABA, the San Francisco chapter of the National Association of Black Accountants. We are currently in the middle of our scholarship application period. Our applications have been extended with a due date of July 31st, 2020. Eligibility details can be found using the tiny URL below, bit.ly/3BFZ39T. This URL is case sensitive. The scholarships that we award range in value from $500 to $2,000. Please, if you know of any high school students, college students, or graduate students, please encourage them to log on to the website to see if they're eligible. We always end up with more dollars than applicants. So it'd be great to have a full boat of eligible applicants to award monies to. Thank you all again for attending, and we hope to see you at our next session.
Thank you.